Daddy, roll this up. I wanted to talk about the assets in your field, the forgotten numbers. So, I see all this all the time, every year, everyone goes through it. What did you spend to do farming? And I did a video of this myself. And in the video I put on there what my herd value was at the end of the year. And I don't think I see anyone do this. I see this with like people talk about like what's better, sheep or cattle? Right? What's like how much is your ROI, right? Your return on investment, right? And I see this all the time. People go, well, this is how long it takes you to pay off what you initially got into it. But nobody ever talks about the fact that you still have the investment in the field. So even though you make back all the money that you paid into it, you still sit on whatever you got invested, plus whatever growth, whatever ups and downs in the market, right? So, and what I'm going to say is if you don't forget this, the fact that you still retain the asset and it still has value up until a point. And this is something I'm going to say about sheep. Sheep don't have nearly as much wiggle room on the amount of money that the assets in the field can make. So I do sheep and I do cattle, and I've come to the conclusion I'm going to do more cattle because I can make more money by having higher value assets I can breed in to the cattle than I can with the sheep. I can take, like I've got a mixed flock, and one of them being something like a painted desert. Out here, painted deserts aren't worth that much. They're a great hardy breed. I love them. I wish they performed better. I can crossbreed them up and I can increase the value of a ram lamb from $150 up to around $200. Meanwhile, a nice Dorper ram is worth around $300. How do I even compete with it? I don't have that much wiggle room on the difference, right? And then people will also forget, like when it comes to sheep, your per animal unit, it costs you more to feed. But the difference being you regularly twin with sheep. But what I will say with cattle is you can take, like, and I'll use my own cows as an example. My cows, I spent $1,000 each on these Texas Longhorns. Not last year, the year prior. Raised them up, they're bred this year, they should calve this year. I only spent $1,000 each on them as the market was coming up. Now, from the same guy I got them from, I got a Texas Longhorn steer for $1,600 this last fall. So, even if I was to buy a heifer at the exact same price, which I would have liked to have done, but he didn't have any available. Make sure you don't fall over on me. At that dollar value, I'm still buying it well under what the market value is for most commercial breeds. Angus, Hereford, Charolais, right? Yada, yada, yada. We'll keep on, right? And even some of the more commercials are crosses, right? And so if you run the numbers on how much more money can I make by running a better bull, right? There's some ethical questions here because first-time heifers on a smaller breed, you don't want to run a big bull, so you have to run a smaller bull in the more commercial breeds, at least for your first-time heifers, which is perfectly fine. No matter what, I'm still going to increase the value of the offspring. But the margin difference now is, my initial investment on the cows I have in the field is less. Right, I'm not spending $4,000. I'm not spending $3,000 on a weaned Angus. I'm spending $1,000 on a weaned Texas Longhorn, or I could spend $2,000 on a yearling Texas Longhorn heifer, and she just gets bred as soon as I want, right? So this is the difference, and no matter what way I cut it, the value of the heifers or the value of the cows in the field, if I buy them young, I can grow them out for less than what the difference is. And the value of the cows in the field I can increase up to a point, as I said. So in a cow, it seems, at least in the local market here, after 6 years they drop off. They become call cows. And I think that's probably pretty close to the same everywhere else. I think some places are a little stricter. They say 5. Some people say 4 years is a call cow, which is hard for me to imagine a 4-year-old call cow. It's like you're sitting here being like, well, this cow's only ever had 2 calves. It's barely better than a heifer. But that being said, my local market, 6 years. before they start depreciating in value. And even then, that 6th year, you can sell it as a cow-calf pair and no one's going to bat an eye. And you can make a decent dollar value on that cow, especially if you raised it from a heifer from 6 years ago. Now, if I bought that heifer 6 years ago as a wean calf, I could have been into that animal for $500, right? And all the feed I put into that animal, I could easily have attributed to each one of the calves and made a profit each year. So this is what I'm saying. Like, so when we sit here and we crunch numbers and we talk about, oh, well, how long does it take to pay off an investment of, let's say, $40,000? Well, even once you've paid it off, that investment is still in the field. You're still up $40,000 on cows, and up until 6 years, and then you got to sell them off as cull cows, right? So then now you already paid them off. Your return on investment's already been made. So now what's the difference? Now you got to start holding back, right? So what's $40,000 worth of holdbacks? Well, it's a lot more than what you had in the field. I'll tell you that now, because it costs you a significant amount less to produce the cows, even on a feeder market, like on a feeder platform where you're not doing any grass. All right, so a 1,400 pound cow at 2% per day is just over 10,000. I think it's 10,522 pounds. I might be off on that. It's one of those things I can't quite remember. Or maybe it was 10,220 pounds. I can't remember on a 1,400 pound cow. So that being said, it depends on what your hay costs are. But on 10,000 pounds of feed, let's say you're paying $100 a bale or close to it, you're probably close to 90 cents per pound, right? So that means that's going to cost you what? That's going to cost you around $1,000 to feed that cow for the entirety of a year, for 12 months. Well, in 12 months, she should be right back. So 100% of that feed input can be put towards the calf you produced. And it never costs you anything to actually feed out the cow, right? Especially when the market says that a wean calf, especially an Angus cross wean calf, is worth $2,000. Let alone a yearling Angus wean calf or cross wean calf. And then in our market here, the crosses only seem to be hit by about 10% on the average, right? So if our average is sitting here at $6.50, which I'm pretty sure at the time I'm videoing this, I'm pretty sure we're closer to $7.80 on our high end of average. I'd have to take a look at what the weights were. Even if it's 10% on the average, that's still a good number considering your breeding stock of easy foragers, which is normally what those lower value animals are because they don't size very well, but the capabilities are high. It's still like, it's a huge difference. But I ended up kind of diverting what I was talking about. Even after you've paid off your sheep flock or your cattle flock, you still retain the value of the herd. You can sell it at any point in time and get 100% of your investment back, unless you've lost animals, unless the value is depreciated because market values dropped, or because your cattle are too old. That being said, you can also increase the value of your herd by retaining stock that costs less to produce than purchase cost, right? So if I sit here and say, well, it cost me $1,000 on a feeder market to produce a calf, and I decide to retain it, well, now let's say I've got the total, let's use my actual numbers, where I've got 5 in the field, now I've got 6 in the field, but I just brought down my overall cost. Well, let's say I've got a bunch of these animals at $4,000, and I've got one now that's worth $1,000, to me, it's worth $1,000, but I add that in there, I bring down the total value of my total investment versus my total market value, right? Because now I've got one extra that's not worth the same as the rest, that's actually worth more than what I've got into it, right? So that increases the difference. But as well as things, I just wanted to make the video to kind of reiterate, just because you paid off your ROI doesn't mean you're zero. Once you've paid off your ROI, you're actually up that initial investment cost. That's what you're up, because you're sitting there. It's not like you pay it off and you're at zero and you have nothing. You still have the herd. You still have what you paid for, right? And that still has a value if you wanted to resell it on the market, just like it did when you purchased it, right? And now, if like, and I see this all the time with bred heifers. Well, now you could cut off at a higher dollar value than bred heifers and sell cow calf pairs, close to cow calf age, at 5 years, and have retained heifers in the previous years, made more than you could make more than what you've actually invested into it. Ooh, I got to turn sooner than I thought. Ooh, 2 gears down. Anyways, that's just food for thought. Just don't forget the fact that even once you've paid off your investment, you still have the entirety of the herd, and that has a value. Just don't forget.